Super Dave here. Thank you for joining me for another edition of Bleeding Edge Interviews, where you get to know a little bit more about the people who are making all the great music you will be hearing on The Expanse, my Live 365 channel, as well as, hey, anywhere else you find progressive rock and metal. Today, we're talking about someone who has been honored as one of the two progressive artists of the decade, 2010 to 2020, along with Mike Portnoy. And of course, we're talking about Neal Morse. If you've been listening to progressive rock in the last 20 years, even longer, you're talking about someone whose output is an influence and impact on the genre is undeniable. From his origins as Spock's Beard, to his work as a solo artist, to his own band, the Neal Morse Band, to the supergroup that is Transatlantic, and now to his newest supergroup, really, the trio, DiVirgilio, Morse, and Jennings. And of course, we're talking about his collaboration with Nick DiVirgilio, also formerly of Spock's Beard, and Ross Jennings of Haken. So yes, Neal Morse, kind of a big deal. So I got to talk with him for a nice stretch of time about the new DMJ album that's coming out November 10th. It's called Sophomore, appropriately enough. And Neal, the gentleman as he is, gave me his time, and we got into a little bit of the creative process and talked about what it is making this album with these two other gentlemen compared to what he's done in the past and how it might surprise some people a little bit. And we got one other little surprise in the mix there for you as well. Maybe it's a surprise for you, maybe it's not. At the very least, we got a little extra for you. So without further ado, here's my conversation with the one and only Neal Morse. Well, let me say, in the interest of ingratiating myself with you at the outset of this conversation, I want to take a moment and note that you have been recognized as one of the pillars of modern progressive music over the last decade or so, especially in conjunction with your buddy Mike Portnoy. So it's a thrill for me to be talking to you at this point in time. I'm absolutely happy to have you here today, and I thank you for your time. I also want to say that it's not lost on me, the irony that we're primarily going to be talking about an album that one may not traditionally consider to be in the progressive mold. So I'm curious your thoughts on that.
Well, like everyone, I think I enjoy a certain amount of variety. And if I've been working on almost nothing but really intense prog concept albums for a couple of years,
yeah,
I like to take a breather and do something that's simpler and easier. Just free, independent songs. It's just nice.
Yeah.
Like just this morning, I wrote just a nice independent sort of song, and so the thing that's great for me about the trio is it's such a great outlet for that side of me, shall we say?
Right. Yeah, I think I saw one reviewer describe it as guys being let off from work to go to recess, as kind of guys breaking loose and stretching out free a little bit.
Yeah, and it's interesting that in my world, for who I am, generally progressive rock was considered, the bands that were originally doing it were stretching beyond really what was considered commercially acceptable.
Yeah.
Doing music, that was too long for radio and odd time signatures and whatnot. And now in my world, if I do an album like this, it's that's more normal music. For my audience, it doesn't sell nearly as well if I do some big progressive crazy thing, because that's just my particular audience's taste.
Sure.
It's just kind of funny though, like my uncommercial music is my commercial music.
Right. And it's interesting you bring that up, because it's not the first time I've spoken to one of the folks in the world of progressive music who said something similar, that expressed a little bit of, I think, frustration at times of feeling that their audience pigeonholes them a little bit and reacts a little negatively when they stretch outside of those predetermined boundaries into something that, especially something that might be considered more commercial, more mainstream. Has that been a reaction for you as well?
No, not really. I have more of an attitude like, man, I'm thankful that so many people do come along.
Yeah.
I mean, the trio records not like Transatlantic or something, but they do pretty well.
Yeah.
And I'm thankful to have an outlet and support from the label. And, um, musical taste is a little bit like taste in food or something, if it's not to people's tastes, I just try to encourage people to, just like I do with food, hey, try it, you
Yeah.
know,
I
try
think
it.
the phrase is try before you deny.
Yeah, try it. Try check out the trio stuff and see what you think before
Yeah.
you throw it in, because I think it's a really nice project and group of guys, and the albums are really good.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really lovely music, and honestly, I think knowing that your background and interest has included things like, acoustic rock or country or folk, and especially Crosby, Stills and Nash. And honestly, the first time I heard you guys, I went, "Holy smokes!" Like, it's the new Crosby, Stills and Nash. The vocal harmonies were that gorgeous. And this far into your career, what was it that said, you know what, now's the time to do this? And how did you decide that Ross Jennings is the person that you wanted to pull in with you and Nick? Because I know it started between you and Nick, and he was kind of the third one. So you reached out. So I'm curious how you determined that now was the time in your career to do this.
Right. Well, we've always done a lot of three-part harmony in all the way back
Yeah.
in Spock's Beard. I remember singing Crosby, Stills and Nash songs when we were just hanging out, like with Nick and my brother Alan, and that was what inspired me to write June, which was initially just, I was thinking, in the very early days of Spock's Beard, we only had long songs. The first album was all long songs, and I thought, well, the audience probably could use a break for their ears. So I originally wrote June just to give people a break, and then it wound up becoming very popular, of course. But yeah, well, like I said, I've always enjoyed those albums. It's some of my favorite music. But I've been a harmony guy since the very beginning. The Beatles did all their three-part stuff and two-part
Right.
stuff. Well, and then Yes had a lot of three-part vocals. Of course, Crosby, Stills and Nash, but there's another one that I'm not putting my finger on right now. But anyway, I've always really loved that kind of thing. So it's not really new for me.
Yeah.
What happened this time was I wrote 2 or 3 songs in that vein. Everything I Am being one of them.
Yeah.
And I think one of the other ones from the first record. And I thought, oh, that'd be a really, it was just totally, I'd like to do this.
Yeah.
So I talked to Nick, and how Ross came in. Of course, I've met Ross many times. We toured together. There was a time when Haken opened for NMB, I believe it was. So we've been around each other quite a bit, and on Cruise to the Edge, also. And I just always really enjoyed his company. But it was because of an interview like this. Inside Out for the Transatlantic Absolute Universe had this idea to have all the guys be interviewed by a peer of theirs. And so I had just watched a little bit of Mike being interviewed by Ross.
Oh, wow.
And so that I think that was in maybe November or December of whatever year that was. And then we started working on this in January. So it was pretty quick, but he came to my mind really because of that.
Yeah.
I thought, oh, wow, I wonder if he'd even be interested in this kind of a project. And so I emailed him, and he got immediately back like, oh, dude, I'm so into that kind of music. You don't even know, because you wouldn't necessarily know that from hearing what he's done with Haken. Yeah. Anyway, so he was like, I'm already working on an acoustic album. I mean, it was just, the timing was just amazing. And and what a perfect thing, it was pretty amazing how it all came together, because you're looking not just for singers, but all artists.
Right.
because that's part of the appeal of the whole thing is it's this kind of melting pot of writers as well as vocals. And so yeah, I think the first time I heard us, I didn't. You probably know this because I've said it many times, but
Yeah.
I didn't hear our vocal blend until we were almost done, ready to deliver the album to be mixed. Because Nick didn't do his vocals till the very end. That was the last thing that he did.
Okay.
So I never heard the three of us singing together until 6 months or something after we signed a record deal.
Yeah. Wow.
And the vocal blend, of course, with, like, as you mentioned, is the whole thing with a record like this.
Yeah.
But I had faith. I knew Nick was going to sound great on the top. I mean, everybody knows that.
Sure.
And I knew from the demos and things that I'd heard that Ross was going to be perfect in the middle, and I really liked everybody's songs. And so I wasn't really shocked, but I was a little bit shocked when I finally put the three vocals up and went.
Yeah. I can imagine. I mean, I wasn't sure what to expect when I first heard about the project either. And then the first song dropped and I went, holy smokes. Like, I didn't necessarily anticipate that blend. I honestly, for me, it was magic of Crosby, Stills and Nash all over again, which just floored me. And it's just such a gorgeous song. And I think it's part of the thing that's amazing to me at this moment, as well as I think back. I look back at what you've been doing the last couple of years, and you've put out an album with Transatlantic. You've put out the studio album and the live album with Neal Morse Band. You've done a solo project, which just dropped a few months ago, and there's another half of that coming next year. You've done Troika, and now a second album with these guys. And I'm flabbergasted at that output. And the fact that I'm not altogether sure that's different than your speed of output over the last 20, 25 years, which is amazing. I'm just imagining you're someone who, almost as you said just now, like someone who's constantly writing songs and song ideas, and you've got like this locker full of them ready to pull out at a moment's notice. And for you, going in the studio is like a lot of us treat going to a pickup basketball game or something like that. You just hit it and go boom, and you're off and running. Is that it? Is that what's going on here? Are you that productive, I guess?
Well, I am productive writing wise.
Yeah.
And it's just what I enjoy doing. So, how they say, find a job that's not just what you love to do, but like the thing that when you're doing it, like time just flies by, and it's like the water that you swim in. It's your natural thing, and that's what writing is for me.
Right.
I can't say that recording is as easy as that. The implementation can be a lot of work. I'll hearing something and then realizing it, on tape, so to speak.
Right.
That's more difficult and requires a lot of coordination of other artists, and that's just a different kettle of fish, really. Yeah. And I enjoy that too, but not nearly as much as my favorite part is the initial writing.
Right.
And I think partly because I love the time when you're just in it, and it doesn't have to be great yet. It doesn't even have to be good yet. There's no pressure of any of that stuff, which comes later when you're making the record. Like, is this mix good enough?
Right.
Is this vocal good enough? There's a lot of that. And, you do that with the song after you're done with it, really. Right. But I don't really do that so much when I'm writing. It's much more kind of spontaneous and impulsive. And I really enjoy that part.
Yeah. Interesting. It gives me a thought that you have some perfectionistic tendencies. Maybe a lot of artists I know do, but it sounds like for you, the creative part is easier than getting that final presentation ready to show the world.
Well, yeah, because then there's you listen to some records and you just think, I do anyway, I just think, wow, that's a perfect record.
Yeah.
It's like you're always in search of the perfect record. In the same way you're in search of the perfect song. Maybe I find that a little bit easier in my own mind.
Yeah.
not like it's like all these songs I've written are perfect in any stretch, but I find it a little easier. I think the chasing after the perfect recording is a little more elusive for me.
Right. And it's amazing because that tendency towards, really wanting to fine tune and be perfectionistic doesn't seem to interrupt your efficiency. In most cases, it often does for people. It slows them down so much they can hardly get something done. I've known people that are still mixing albums for months on end trying to get it perfect and delays it getting out, but doesn't seem to slow you down.
Well, I talk about that a lot, like when I do a master class thing, the Radiant School, it's called, and I'll have a bunch of artists in there, writers and guys that want to learn, of course. And one of the things I talk about, like, man, you can be Mozart, but if you don't finish something and get it out, it can be very difficult. People, I know really, really talented people, super virtuoso composers and players, but a lot of people do have trouble saying, okay, this is done.
Yeah.
Okay, here it is, world. And I guess I've been blessed. I've noticed that about myself. Like, I have an impulse. It's hard for me to leave things unfinished, even if I have a song idea that I don't even like that much or I'm not sure about.
Yeah.
I have a compulsion to finish it to a place where I can maybe do a voice memo or exist somewhere. I've got the lyric, I until that point, something in me can't rest.
Yeah. Wow. So it's that drive that keeps you moving as well. It's a nice balance, I think, in some ways.
Well, and the other thing is, and this is a great thing, that I'm just so thankful for. Part of it is having the time.
Yeah.
Having the time. People will say, like yourself, wow, how do you do, put out as much stuff? Like,
Right.
well, if you're working on music every day, you can, and if you think about it, a lot of great, even progressive rock, even themes, really great themes, they come out. Then, it doesn't take even an hour. You get some inspiration and you hear a theme, or a song. Most of our favorite songs were written in an hour or two.
Wow.
Really, I mean, if you read, from songwriters, usually it's like, oh yeah, John Lennon, I was inspired with Help. I had the first bit and I was done in 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And Elton John, a lot of our favorite songs were written very quickly. So it's all about whether the inspiration's coming.
Yeah.
But it doesn't take that long. You could potentially, and I think a lot of times, and I talk about this too in the class, we put limits on how much people can do, how much we can do, and how much others can do. And it's fun. It's funny. It's something to stay with me from ages ago. I think it was about L. Ron Hubbard, the Scientology guy.
Oh,
like
wow.
he dictated like 60 books before he died or something. Wow. Like, I don't know if they're any good. I don't know anything about it. But the point is, I don't know where I read it, but he had said, "Oh yeah, well that's because I don't have any limitations on myself. Why not?
Yeah.
Why can't you dictate a book in 2 days?" I mean, I'm like, well, I guess it's possible.
Sure.
So it's kind of like that. It's like, well, what can God do through me?
Yeah.
He has no limitations. I get really excited about that. That's really the excited thing about creativity and spirituality, is that there's no limit.
Right.
All the limits are up here, and we got to take those off and see what's possible.
Yeah, good point. And I think for a lot of us observing and watching, we probably tend to project our own limitations onto others. So that's a part of me that says, I know for me, if I came up with 3 original musical ideas in my lifetime, I'm probably surprised. And the fact that you could probably do 3 of them before breakfast amazes me. So that's, like that. maybe I'm too limited in my ability, or maybe I'm too limited in my thought. I'm not sure which. I haven't fully tested it, mostly because I can't write music. But
Yeah, well, that's really, I'm not saying that everybody can do everything, because we can
sure,
all, I think, we can operate in the gifting that we have been given, is
yeah,
the way I see it. But inside of that, man, I mean, the sky really is the limit. And so I just encourage people in that way.
yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool. So obviously, you enjoyed the process working with Nick and Ross, particularly in this particular grouping, this trio. So, I mean, we're not even at the second anniversary of Troika's release. So, you guys got back together pretty quickly. And I'm wondering how that familiarity that was established in the first go around, how did that impact the second trip around for you?
Well, they were both really, compared to some of, especially compared, we shouldn't compare. It's always unwise to compare. But compared to other records that I've been involved with, the DMJ stuff is just so easy because, well, first of all, the instrumentation,
Yeah.
and the songs are easier and simpler, first of all. But not only that, but like on the Joseph albums, it's like I'm building two mansions by myself, practically. Like I'm bringing in guys to put the windows in, and I'm maybe bringing a guy to do the floor,
Yeah.
but everything else I'm doing myself. So it's just like, wow, super labor intensive. And it doesn't have to be that way. I just felt like that's how that should be. So every record's different. But with DMJ, they do a bunch of the building. They send sometimes almost finished tracks, and I'll listen and go, okay, I'll add a little organ and I'll sing the bottom part. And it's pretty amazing.
That's awesome.
How easy and nice. And I think that's one of the appeals of making these albums for all of us. But they were both really like that.
Yeah.
We send songs around. We pick them pretty easily. We generally agree on what songs are good, and then we're doing it all file sharing, and
Right.
which maybe there's things to be said for that, things to be said against that. But with especially with Ross being in London, I think it's kind of a little bit prohibitive for us to get together. Frankly, we don't have a huge budget,
Sure.
so we're dealing with what we're dealing with. But I think we're all really happy with it too. It's it's all about when you put up the tracks, so you're like going, yeah. So we're having plenty of that.
That's nice. I like that. And I imagine in this modern world, there's that opportunity that, as you guys are doing whatever you're doing, because I know Haken's been busy touring heavily, and you've been busy, and everybody's busy. But I imagine there's that opportunity that is afforded now where one of you can wake up one morning, like you said, pardon me, write something and go, this would really be cool for DMJ. Let me shoot this out to the guys and give a listen. And you're essentially accruing an album maybe over the course of a year or two, just little by little.
Yeah. That's how that was. Hard to Be Easy. I wrote whenever NMB was on tour. I think it was June of that year. When we didn't start really working on it together for many months later. So it was like that. Yeah, there was. So then songs that had come from here and there, and I'm sure it was the same for them.
Yeah.
It's just great to have such great people. Just imagine,
Yeah.
Hey, you can call. That's one thing that's so great about getting to a certain level in your career is you can call people up and. As talented as these guys, and they want to, yeah, sure, yeah, that's
awesome.
That's really awesome. Yeah. Who was it? I was seeing it, and there was an actor I saw interviewed said something like that recently too. It's like, well, one of the great things about reaching a certain level, that's one of the best, is that you can kind of, if there's somebody that you want to work with, and I'm not really quite there. I mean, there's, uh, it's like I can't call up Peter Gabriel and he'll say, "Oh yeah, sure,"
Oh, and now you've just set up a whole fantasy scenario where a lot of people are hearing this and going, "Yes, do that."
Well, of course, I would want to do that, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Sure, Peter Gabriel would say, "Neil, who?" But anyway, yeah, it's a wonderful project, and we're all really happy about it.
Yeah. It's I imagine that's a much nicer working process too, because I mean, when I read about albums being recorded, quote unquote, back in the day, 70s, 80s, and things like that. And the idea that people basically got to a point where, all right, it's time to make an album. Let's go to the studio. And they start writing there. Like the creative process started there. I'm sitting there thinking, how do you just turn on the creativity and start doing something on a timeline? Like that knocks me out. But I have to imagine this is a much more relaxed process for everybody involved.
Yeah, it definitely is. I've done quite a few records in that way too.
Yeah, have you?
The Flying Colors albums are all like that.
Oh, no kidding. Okay.
People, well, the first record we had some pretty good chunks of demos to work from, but after that, we were writing in the room together, and again, it's all about if the magic is happening.
Yeah.
And nice. NMB's done a lot of that too. Let's just come together. Sometimes I'll pray about it and feel like I don't come in with anything.
All right.
Watch what happens and just, contribute in the room, because there's something about that space that's really great.
Yeah.
Too, because it's an opening for everyone to contribute. Whereas if I come in with a bunch of finished songs, there's not as much room.
Right. That makes sense. I get that. It's an interesting perspective I hadn't considered. Again, haven't done what you've done. So it's like I can only see this from the outsider's perspective. And it's very interesting to hear. But it makes a lot of sense in my mind as well to come in with that blank slate. Personally, I'm intimidated with a blank slate. That's how I've always been. Because I want to go in too many directions at once.
Well, I get it. Especially, like when we were scheduled to do the first Transatlantic album. Mike was at the kind of, really at the height maybe of his, success in DT at the time. And I don't remember how many days he allotted for us, but it was not very many, like maybe 4.
Oh, wow.
And I got there early and stayed after, as did some of the other guys, to work on some of the stuff. But we didn't have many days all together. And I was nervous that unless I came in with a bunch of stuff that we could just play, we wouldn't be able to make a great record, or a record at all. Actually, right. We wouldn't be able to finish anything, and it was going to be super hard and expensive to try to get back together. So I felt a lot of pressure back then, but I think I've learned to trust more over the years. But because when you feel that pressure, you're not going to be your kindest. You're going to be, you try as you might, that tension's going to show up somewhere, and usually not in good ways.
Yeah. Now, the upside is those stressful situations can teach us some things, and that's how you find your Zen later, so to speak. I survived this. I can do it.
Sometimes the deadline really works for you.
Yeah.
Like if you wouldn't have had the deadline, you wouldn't have got up at 5 a.m. to try to finish writing this thing. And, that becomes part of it too. It's all different every time.
Yeah, I can imagine. Pardon me again. Speaking of pardon me. Speaking of different, is it my imagination, or does the new record here, showing my age, it's a new album pushing a little bit into grittier, harder territory and a little bit more country? I feel like you've kind of taken the original core and pushed out a little more into those various specific elements, I guess I'll say. Is that me? Is that what really happened you found going on then? Was that intentional?
I don't know. I'd have to really give credit to Ross and Nick for that.
Yeah.
Because the songs that I wrote I wouldn't say are really like reaching beyond the boundaries of what we already did, just to be honest.
Right.
It was really their stuff, like Nick's Mama, it was different and
Mm.
edgy and
Yeah.
really cool and kind of Neil Young-ish to me.
Uh-huh.
And then, man, Ross's Weighs Me Down is so different.
Yeah.
And that whole fade is so, just the whole way that Jerry Guidros mixed it too is just
Nice.
really, new territory. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
But I have to give the credit to those guys for that.
That's very cool, though. I like it. I like to see that expansion a little bit.
Yeah.
Being mindful of your time here, I know we're coming up, but I figure I would be much remiss if I didn't give you an opportunity to talk about, as I hear the announcement just went out, Morse Fest will be doing very first event in the UK. How exciting is that? What are you
Yeah.
able to share about that at this time?
Oh yeah, it just went on sale. I came home from Morse Fest in the Netherlands that we did in August, exhausted, but almost immediately felt inside like we should do more.
Yeah.
While we have this opportunity and we have all the music in our hands, we should do more. And I know it's some months away as is necessary, but yeah, I started reaching out, and now we're doing a Morse Fest London, January 12th and 13th of 2024. And you can, of course, find it all on the web. And
Yeah.
we're going to do Testimony and Testimony 2. We're really going to do the same material because it was so off the chart blessed.
Wow.
So if anybody can get there, you should get there, because I'm sure it's the last time. I'm pretty sure it's the last time we'll do those two albums together in this configuration. And the concerts that we did in August were insane. It was so great.
Wow.
So yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for your time, sir. I've really enjoyed the conversation with you today. It's been a thrill, as I noted, because I've been a fan of you with and without Spock's beard for 20 years almost at this point in time. And I've been a close follower. So it's really, really awesome to get to talk to you. And I hope Sophomore is every bit as successful as Troika, even more so. It comes out, November 10th, if memory serves, correct?
That sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. Excellent. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate your time. Best wishes.
Thank you for all your kind words, and I appreciate it as well.
Absolutely. Take care.
All right. Have a good one, man.
And there you have it. Honestly, what a gentleman. He couldn't have been nicer. Really one of the most pleasurable conversations I've had. And I've had a lot of really good conversations. So it's really cool to get to finally talk to, the godfather, one of the godfathers of modern prog, one of the Mount Rushmore. You can't deny it. The man has been absolutely massively impactful with his body of work. And he couldn't be nicer. Couldn't be nicer. Neal, I want to thank you once again for your time. I really appreciate you talking with me. Best of luck with the new DMJ album. I hope it's every bit as successful as Troika, even more so. And I hope Neal, and I also want to wish you the best with Morse Fest and everything else you're going to be doing, because I know there's going to be a lot more coming out from you in the very near future, my friend. So thank you once again. Those of you watching, if you enjoy this content, do me a favor, hit the like button, hit subscribe, hit the bell so you know when more of these things are coming out. And I do have more slated coming up really soon, along with my reaction videos and some other stuff I'll be doing in the near future as well. If you get a chance, check it out. The social media links are down in the description. You can find me at Facebook and Instagram /threads, and the artist formerly known as Twitter. Follow me there, interact a little bit. I'm a one-man show, but I get a lot done. And hey, if you don't mind, check out my backlog of podcast editions of these interviews. They are wherever you find podcasts. There's a bunch of them if you want to go check them out, from major artists in the progressive rock field, the progosphere, as I like to call it. And finally, once again, check out Live 365, my channel, The Expanse. Nothing but prog rock, prog metal, prog pop. If it's progressive, it's there. Go check it out. Link is also below. So once again, thank you very much to Neal Morse, and thank you for watching. This is Super Dave, signing off.